They say some mirrors don't just reflect. They see, they watch, they know. I thought it was just a myth, until I saw what was waiting behind the glass. And now, it's coming for me. Some things are meant to be left alone, but I touched it. I looked, and now, the mirror knows my name. It began with a storm that had rolled in from nowhere. Thick gray clouds hung over the fields of Somerset, and the long single-track road that wound between hedgerows was already slick with rain. Emily and her younger brother, Daniel, sat silently in the car, the heater humming, their breath fogging the windows. They had been driving for hours from London to their grandmother's old countryside home, a sprawling, crumbling house she had left them in her will. Neither of them wanted to be here, but the lawyer had insisted. The keys will be handed to you in person. The contents of the house are yours. Emily glanced at her brother. His earbuds were in, head tilted against the window, but she could see the tension in his jaw. Neither of them had visited the house in over 15 years. Their grandmother had been a strange woman, obsessed with antiques, with long-forgotten rituals, with objects that carried histories. Emily had been only 10 when she had last been here. She still remembered the creak of the floorboards and the smell of candle wax and dust. The rain thickened, turning the view outside into a gray smear. They reached the village, or what was left of it. A single pub with a flickering sign, a closed post office, and a crooked chapel leaning against the wind. No one was on the street. Emily slowed the car as they passed the pub. She caught sight of a man standing at the window, staring out at them with pale eyes. Then he turned away, disappearing into the dim interior. Creepy place, Daniel muttered without opening his eyes. Emily forced a smile. It's just the countryside. 10 minutes later, they pulled into the driveway of the old house. It rose out of the mist like a black shipwreck, 3 stories high. Roof sagging, windows like dark eyes. Ivy climbed the stone walls. The iron gates screeched as Emily pushed them open, her boots sinking into wet gravel. The house smelled faintly of damp earth and something else, something metallic, like old blood. Inside, the air was colder than outside. Dust lay thick on every surface. Sheets covered the furniture like ghosts. Their grandmother's portraits still lined the hallway. Grim women in dark dresses, eyes following them. The lawyer had left an envelope on the entryway table with the keys. Next to it was a smaller note in her grandmother's handwriting. Do not touch the mirror in the attic. Emily stared at the note. Daniel snorted. Typical. She was always dramatic, but Emily felt a faint shiver. She remembered the attic, dim and narrow, filled with trunks and boxes. She remembered a tall, draped object in the corner, something she had never been allowed to look at. They explored the house in silence. The kitchen smelled of mildew. The parlor was cluttered with statues of angels missing their heads. In the dining room, a massive chandelier hung like a cluster of frozen tears. Emily ran her hand along the carved wooden table. She could almost hear voices murmuring from the past. The clatter of silverware, her grandmother's sharp laugh. That night, the wind screamed around the house. Rain rattled against the windows like thrown pebbles. Emily lay awake in the bedroom that had once been hers, staring at the ceiling. Daniel had taken the room across the hall. She could hear him moving restlessly. She tried to close her eyes, but the memory of the note burned in her mind. Do not touch the mirror in the attic. At midnight, she got up. The hallway was dark. The house creaked as if breathing. She told herself she just wanted to make sure the attic door was locked. That was all. She climbed the narrow staircase at the end of the hall. The wood groaned under her weight. The attic smelled of old paper and cold metal. Her flashlight beam cut through the darkness, catching on trunks, on cracked dolls with blank eyes, on stacks of yellowed newspapers. And there, in the far corner, stood a tall object covered by a heavy black cloth. The shape was unmistakable. Emily approached slowly. Her heart thudded in her chest. The cloth stirred slightly as if touched by a draft, but there was no draft. She reached out and touched the fabric. It was damp and cold. She should have left. She should have turned around and gone back to her room. Instead, she pulled the cloth down. The mirror was enormous, framed in carved wood that twisted like vines around faces, screaming faces, their mouths open as if frozen in terror. The glass itself was black at first, like deep water. Then as she stared, it lightened, reflecting her pale face, her dark hair, the beam of her flashlight. For a moment, nothing happened. Then she noticed something odd. The reflection behind her wasn't the attic. It was somewhere else, a hallway she didn't recognize, lined with doors. The lighting was dim and red. Her breath caught. She turned around. The attic was still there. She turned back to the mirror. The hallway and the reflection stretched on endlessly, doors slowly opening one by one. "Emily!" Her name whispered through the attic. She spun around. No one was there. She looked back at the mirror. The reflection had changed again. Now she saw herself, but not as she was. Her skin was pale, lips blue, eyes wide and glassy. Her hands were covered in something dark. She was lying on the attic floor, blood pooling beneath her. Emily stumbled back, the flashlight clattering to the ground. The image flickered but remained. Her own dead face stared back at her. She grabbed the cloth and threw it over the mirror. The attic seemed to exhale, a low groan rolling through the rafters. She fled down the stairs, heart pounding. Daniel was waiting in the hallway, rubbing his eyes. "What the hell are you doing up there?" Emily tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "There's something wrong with the mirror." Daniel frowned. "Seriously? It's just an old mirror." "No," she whispered. "It showed me." She couldn't finish. He shook his head. "You're tired. It's this creepy house messing with you." But as he turned away, Emily noticed something on his shirt, a faint smear of something dark near his sleeve. She blinked. It was gone. That night she dreamed of the hallway and the mirror. She dreamed of doors opening and whispering voices. She dreamed of herself lying on the attic floor, staring at the ceiling with dead eyes. She woke before dawn, trembling. The house was silent. She went to the window. The fields outside were covered in mist. At the edge of the property, near the crooked fence, she saw a figure, tall, thin, motionless, watching the house. When she blinked, it was gone. At breakfast, Daniel was pale and distracted. He kept glancing toward the ceiling. "I heard something last night," he muttered. "Like footsteps in the attic." Emily stared at her plate. "Don't go up there." He smirked, but there was no humor in it. "What's up there, Em?" She shook her head. "It's cursed. Grandma warned us." Daniel rolled his eyes but didn't answer. The day dragged on. They tried to clean, but the house seemed endless, every room darker than the last. The mirrors in the bathrooms were all covered with cloths. Emily's phone had no signal. The clocks in the house all ran slow. By evening, the wind had picked up again. Emily found Daniel standing at the bottom of the attic stairs, staring upward. "I just want to see it," he said softly. "Don't," she snapped. But he went up anyway. She followed him, heart in her throat. The attic door was open. The black cloth lay crumpled on the floor. The mirror stood uncovered, glass gleaming like ice. Daniel stood in front of it, leaning closer. "Daniel!" she shouted. He didn't move. She grabbed his arm and yanked him back. His face was white as paper. "What did you see?" she demanded. He swallowed hard. "I saw me, but not me. I was older. My eyes were gone. There was someone standing behind me." Emily looked at the mirror. The glass was black again, reflecting nothing. She covered it quickly. "We're leaving," she said. But as they turned toward the stairs, a voice whispered from the darkness, "You can't leave." The attic door slammed shut. The sound of the attic door slamming was like a gunshot. Emily froze, her heart hammering in her chest. Daniel spun around, yanking at the doorknob, but it didn't move. The house had gone utterly silent except for the wind moaning outside. "Stop," Emily whispered. "Just stop touching it." Daniel looked at her, his eyes wide. "It's locked from the outside, Em. How is that even possible?" She didn't answer. The air in the attic felt heavy now, thick, like breathing underwater. The black cloth that covered the mirror began to stir, though there was no breeze. "Emily," Daniel said softly, stepping back. "Did you see that?" The cloth slowly slid down, as if invisible fingers were peeling it away. It fell to the floor soundlessly, revealing the mirror again. The glass shimmered faintly. Emily grabbed Daniel's hand. "Don't look at it." "I'm not," he said. But his eyes flickered toward it anyway, a human instinct too strong to fight. The reflection wasn't them anymore. It was the attic, yes, but distorted, stretched, as if seen through deep water. Behind their reflection stood a third figure. Tall, thin, face covered in shadow. Its hands rested on their shoulders in the reflection, though Emily felt nothing. She gasped and turned away, pulling Daniel down to the floor. The attic light flickered. The bulb above them began to buzz, casting the walls in jerky flashes of light. With every flicker, the figure in the mirror seemed closer. Then the bulb exploded. Glass rained down. They screamed and scrambled to the door. Emily banged on it with her fists. "Let us out! Please let us out!" The mirror behind them pulsed with dim red light. Then, as suddenly as it had closed, the door creaked open on its own. They ran, down the narrow stairs through the hall, past the portraits whose painted eyes seemed alive. They didn't stop until they were in the kitchen, gasping, shaking. Daniel leaned on the table. "What the hell was that?" Emily couldn't answer. She kept seeing the reflection, those long fingers, that faceless thing behind them. They sat in silence for a long time, the storm howling outside. Finally, Daniel said, "We should smash it." She looked up. "What?" "The mirror. We should destroy it. If it's cursed, that's the only way." Emily hesitated. "What if that makes it worse?" Daniel gave a short, humorless laugh. "Worse than this?" They waited until morning. The rain had stopped, but the fog was thicker than ever, crawling over the fields like smoke. The house felt different in daylight, not safer, just quieter, as if waiting. Daniel went to the shed and came back with a hammer. Emily followed him up the attic stairs, clutching her phone flashlight even though she wasn't sure it helped. The mirror stood there covered again, still. Daniel pulled the cloth off. The glass was black, reflecting nothing. He raised the hammer. "Wait," Emily said. "What?" She didn't know. Something deep inside her screamed, "Don't do it." But she couldn't explain why. He hesitated, then swung. The hammer hit the glass and stopped midair. Daniel frowned and tried again. The hammer simply froze inches before touching the mirror, as if some invisible barrier stopped it. The metal trembled in his hand. "Daniel, stop!" Emily cried. But he swung again, harder. This time the mirror absorbed the blow. The glass rippled like water, swallowing the reflection of the hammerhead. For a heartbeat, it stayed still. Then the hammer was yanked forward out of his hand and pulled into the mirror. Daniel stumbled back. "What the—" The hammer was gone, vanished. Emily screamed. Then the mirror rippled again, and something hit the inside of the glass from within, a handprint, long fingers pressing against the other side, smeared in something dark and red. Daniel grabbed her. "Run!" They sprinted down the stairs, nearly tripping. The air behind them filled with the sound of creaking wood, shifting footsteps. When they reached the front door, Daniel twisted the handle, but it wouldn't move. "Not again," he muttered, jerking at it until his knuckles went white. Emily tried the windows. They wouldn't open either. It was as if the house itself was holding them in. Then they both heard it. Footsteps above them, slow, heavy. Someone, or something, was walking across the second floor. They looked up. The sound moved closer to the staircase. Daniel grabbed a knife from the counter. "If that's someone messing with us—" "Daniel, it's not someone," Emily said softly. "It's something." The footsteps stopped. For a long time there was silence. Then a faint sound echoed from upstairs. A low, dragging noise like something being pulled across the floor. Emily whispered, "The mirror." They heard a crash, wood splintering, glass shattering. Then quiet again. Daniel looked at her. "I'm going up." She grabbed his arm. "No!" He shook her off. "We can't just hide." He crept up the stairs, knife in hand. Emily followed, her every step trembling. The hallway was darker than before. The air felt electric. When they reached the top, they both saw it. The attic door was wide open. Shards of glass glittered on the floor, reflecting faint light. The mirror was shattered, or so it seemed. Daniel stepped closer. "It's broken," he said, relief in his voice. "It's over." But as he spoke, the shards began to move. Tiny slivers of glass slid across the floor like insects, joining together, reforming. Within seconds, the mirror stood whole again. The frame pulsed faintly, the carved faces twisting as if in pain. Emily backed away. "It's alive." The mirror's surface rippled once more. And then, impossibly, a shape pushed through the glass. A hand emerged first, long and pale, fingers too thin to be human. Then a face, if it could be called that, smooth and blank, except for a mouth that stretched too wide. Daniel froze. Emily screamed his name, but the thing was already halfway out, its body unfolding like smoke. It reached for him. He swung the knife, slashing at its arm, but the blade passed through as if cutting mist. The creature tilted its head, almost curious. Then it touched him. Daniel convulsed, gasping. His eyes turned completely black. The knife clattered to the floor. "Daniel!" Emily screamed, grabbing him, but he shoved her away. His voice came out low, distorted, not his own. "He belongs to the mirror now." She stumbled backward, shaking her head. "No, no, please." The creature, or what Daniel had become, turned toward her. The skin of his face shimmered like glass. His reflection moved slightly out of sync with him. "Emily," he said in two voices at once, his and another deeper one. "Come see." She ran, down the stairs, through the hall, into the pouring rain outside. She didn't stop until she reached the main road. Her car was still there, slick with rain. Her hands shook as she fumbled with the keys. When she looked up at the house, every window was dark, except one. The attic. In that window, she saw Daniel standing perfectly still, watching her. And beside him, a tall, thin figure. She started the car and drove. She didn't stop until she reached the next town. She told herself it had been a hallucination, the stress, the house, the storm. But 3 days later, she woke in her apartment to find her bathroom mirror fogged over. On the glass, written in dripping letters, were 3 words. "You can't run." Emily smashed the mirror. Her hands bled, glass embedding in her palms. She wrapped them in towels, shaking. That night, she dreamed of the attic again. But this time, she was the one standing in the window. And someone else, someone who looked just like her, was driving away. When she woke, there was a message on her phone. No number, no name, just an image. It was a photo of her bedroom, taken from the foot of the bed. She hadn't taken it. The next evening, she drove to the police station. They didn't believe her. They said maybe someone was stalking her. Maybe she had been pranked. One officer offered to check the property in Somerset. 2 days later, he called. His voice was strange. "Miss, the house is empty." "What do you mean empty?" she asked. "There's no furniture, no dust, nothing, like no one's lived there in 100 years. Emily froze. "That's not possible. I was just there." He hesitated. "Ma'am, the property records say the house burned down in 1972. Her phone slipped from her hand. "No, that's not true. I was there. I saw it." "Ma'am?" The line went dead. That night, she sat alone in her apartment, lights off. The city outside was quiet. She tried to tell herself she was losing her mind. Then she saw it, her reflection in the window glass. It wasn't moving with her. Slowly, it smiled. Emily couldn't sleep. Not that she'd slept at all since that night. Every shadow in her apartment seemed alive. And every reflective surface, mirrors, windows, even the black screen of her phone, made her stomach churn. She kept glancing at them, half expecting the reflection to move differently than she did. Her phone buzzed again. Another image. This one was a photograph of her grandmother's house. Only the house was whole, not burned, not ruined. Exactly as it had been the day Emily and Daniel first arrived. In the photo, the attic window was open, and through it she could see herself standing there, pale, frozen. Her heart slammed. She slammed her laptop shut. She tried calling Daniel, but the line went straight to voicemail. She left desperate messages. He didn't respond. By midday, she had convinced herself she had to return to Somerset. She had to understand what had happened, to confront it. Emily rented a car and drove back. The road was long, winding, and eerie. The fog rolled in, thick and suffocating, as if the countryside itself wanted to stop her. She kept remembering her grandmother's note. "Do not touch the mirror in the attic." She had ignored it then. Could she survive if she ignored it again? When she arrived, the property was fenced off and a new sign was posted. "Private property. Keep out." She circled the edge of the field and approached the old gate. The gravel crunched under her shoes. Her mind raced with every possible explanation, but deep down she knew none of them fit. The mirror was real. Daniel was gone. Emily climbed the hill to the house. It looked different, older, more menacing. Black ivy crept higher, and the windows were dark and empty. But she didn't see any signs of the police, no evidence that anyone had been there. She forced herself inside. The front door gave way easily, as if welcoming her. The interior smelled faintly of smoke and dust. The walls were stripped of pictures. The furniture gone. It was as if the house had been erased, but she knew better. She climbed the narrow stairs to the attic. The door was intact. No shards of glass littered the floor. No sign of the chaos she had witnessed. The black cloth lay on the floor. Emily approached cautiously. Her fingers trembled as she reached down to lift it. The mirror was whole, untouched, gleaming faintly as if polished. The faces carved into the frame twisted when she looked away and then froze again. A whisper echoed in the room. "You came back." Emily spun around. The attic was empty. She swallowed hard. "Who's there?" she demanded. No answer, only the sound of the wind through the broken roof shingles. She looked back at the mirror. Her reflection was her own, but wrong. Her eyes were darker, hollow. Her mouth twitched into a smile that she hadn't made. And then behind her reflection, she saw him. Daniel, or what he had become. Pale, thin, eyes black, expressionless. He didn't move, yet he was there. Emily gasped. The mirror rippled. A hand emerged, thin, long fingers, pale as paper. The figure's face slowly pressed against the glass. But it wasn't Daniel anymore. It was her grandmother. Emily's blood ran cold. Her grandmother's face twisted in agony, the mouth stretching impossibly wide. A whisper came from the mirror. "It began with me, and now it is yours." Emily stumbled back, tripping over the floorboards. She fell, scraping her palms. The mirror's surface rippled again. This time, more than just reflections appeared. A series of images flashed. A man in a dark shop selling mirrors, candles burning, faces staring from every surface. A long table covered in broken glass, hands reaching from the shards. Her grandmother, young, kneeling before the cursed mirror, whispering words she could not understand. Emily realized the mirror had been in her grandmother's possession for decades. The woman had known its power, perhaps even tried to control it. But control wasn't enough. Suddenly the mirror pulsed with a deep red light. Emily could hear voices, hundreds of them, whispering, crying, screaming. They all seemed to come from the glass, yet surround her at once. One voice rose above the rest, clear, female, her grandmother. "Do not touch it. Never touch it. But if you are here, it has chosen you." Emily staggered backward, nearly falling again. She realized the truth. The mirror didn't just reflect death. It could reach through time, through dimensions, through space. And it had chosen her. The attic door slammed shut behind her. She turned. The mirror had changed. No longer just a surface of reflections, it had become a doorway. A black endless void shimmered in the glass. Faces of unknown people, victims of the mirror over centuries, pressed against the surface. Their eyes begged for release, their mouths silent, screaming in frozen horror. Emily wanted to run. She wanted to leave, but her legs refused to move. The air in the attic thickened. Each breath felt like inhaling smoke. A hand, pale, twisted, clawed, emerged from the mirror, reaching toward her. Emily screamed and stumbled backward. The mirror seemed to pulse with her fear, rippling violently now, as though alive. Then a new sound, footsteps, not hers, not Daniel's. Something moving behind her. Emily turned slowly. A shadowy figure stood at the far corner of the attic. It was humanoid, but the proportions were wrong. Limbs too long, fingers too thin, head tilting unnaturally. Its face was obscured by shadows, but its eyes glowed faintly red. It spoke. "It wants you." Emily's scream was cut short. The figure lunged. The mirror's surface rippled violently, and Emily felt herself pulled forward. Her limbs stiffened as if gravity had reversed. She struggled, but the glass yanked at her. She could feel the pull of hundreds of trapped souls behind the surface, pushing her, pulling her, dragging her in. With a final, desperate shove, Emily threw herself backward. She landed on the floor, gasping, palms bleeding. The mirror's surface rippled one last time, and then became still, reflecting nothing but the empty attic. Emily sat there, shaking, unsure if she had survived or if this was the beginning of her own entrapment. She had to know the origin of this mirror. She had to understand its curse before it claimed her, before she became just another face trapped behind the glass. That night, she started searching through her grandmother's old letters, diaries, and photographs, which she had brought back with her from London. She discovered a series of cryptic notes. The mirror feeds on fear. The fear of the innocent is sweetest. Each reflection is a soul captured. The mirror never forgets. If you look too long, it will choose you as it chose me. Emily realized the truth. The mirror was never meant to be touched. Its power was ancient, older than the house, older than her grandmother. And now it had chosen her. She didn't know how long she had until it returned, until it came for her completely, until the reflection she saw each morning became her new reality. But one thought remained clear. She had to fight it. She had to learn its history, discover its weakness, or she would join Daniel and her grandmother behind the glass, trapped forever in its endless screaming void. And that was only the beginning. The night didn't end after the attic door slammed shut. It only changed shape. Rain pressed against the windows like desperate fingers, and the old house seemed to breathe in slow, heavy sighs. Amelia sat on the floor, back to the wall, the flashlight trembling in her hand. The mirror loomed a few feet away, draped now beneath an old sheet. But even through the fabric, she could feel its attention, like heat through glass. She whispered to herself, "You can't scare me." But her own voice came back from under the sheet, slightly delayed, slightly wrong. "You can't save me." The words froze her blood. The sheet shifted, just once, like something underneath had taken a long, quiet breath. She backed away until her shoulders hit the staircase railing. The house was silent again, but that silence didn't feel empty. It felt crowded. Downstairs, the grandfather clock ticked irregularly, offbeat, uneven, as if it too had started to mimic a pulse. When she finally moved, it was only to fetch her phone from the kitchen counter. The signal was dead again. No bars, no Wi-Fi, just a faint static hiss from the speaker. Then, a notification blinked across the black screen. A new photo, but she hadn't taken one. Her thumb hovered before opening it. The picture showed her, standing in front of the mirror with no sheet covering it. Behind her reflection stood another Amelia, smiling. She dropped the phone. It clattered against the tiles, and for a second the image flashed upside down before the screen went dark. The air changed, colder, thinner. The house seemed to inhale and hold its breath. She knew what the mirror wanted. It wanted her to look. She told herself not to. Not again, but curiosity is its own possession. Slowly she walked back to the attic. Each step groaned louder than the one before, as if warning her. The flashlight beam trembled across the floorboards until it found the covered frame. The sheet had slipped slightly at the corner, showing a sliver of glass like a wound that wouldn't heal. She took a deep breath and yanked the cloth away. The reflection wasn't hers. It was Daniel. His skin gray, his eyes glassy, lips moving without sound. He pointed toward something behind her. She spun around, nothing there. When she turned back, his hand was pressed against the inside of the mirror, palm to the glass, and faint cracks spidered outward from where his fingers touched. Then his voice, muffled but unmistakable. "Help me." Amelia's scream never fully left her throat. The mirror pulsed once as though it had a heartbeat, and then the image was gone. Only her reflection remained, pale and shaking. She stumbled back, gasping. The attic smelled of old dust and cold iron. For the first time she noticed faint words, scratched into the mirror's wooden frame, letters carved by something sharp, half hidden under centuries of varnish. "Do not answer the reflection." Amelia didn't sleep that night. She sat by the mirror with a hammer in her hand, watching her own reflection twitch and breathe like something alive. Behind the glass, every tick of the clock sounded like footsteps coming closer. She whispered, almost praying, "You took them. You won't take me." A hair-thin crack ran down the center of the mirror. It pulsed faintly, red like a vein under skin. Then a voice came from inside, Daniel's, and her grandmother's, layered together in a slow whisper. "You can't break what you are part of." She screamed and swung the hammer. The mirror exploded into 100 shards that rained across the attic floor, each piece catching a different part of her face, her mouth, her eyes, her fear. The noise shook the house. Dust fell from the rafters like ash. When the echo finally died, only silence remained. The mirror was gone, dead. Her reflection shattered into dust. Amelia collapsed, shaking and crying. The air felt lighter, like the house had finally let out a long-held breath. She crawled to the window. Dawn was bleeding into the horizon. For the first time in weeks, she saw sunlight. Downstairs, she packed her bag, left the attic door open, and didn't look back. The house watched her go, its windows like tired eyes. When she reached her car, she whispered, "It's over." But it wasn't. As she started the engine, the radio flickered to life by itself. No music, just soft static. Then buried in the hiss, a voice whispered, "You broke the glass," but the reflection had to go somewhere. She stared at the rearview mirror. For a moment, it showed only the empty road. Then the reflection smiled, before she did. The car swerved as she screamed. The screen on her phone lit up in the passenger seat. A notification appeared. New photo saved. The thumbnail showed her, standing behind herself. The phone went dark. The forest swallowed the sound. And somewhere, in a place made only of reflections, 100 trapped souls began to laugh. If you think it's over, look a little closer. Some mirrors never stop watching. And if you're brave enough to face the next curse, subscribe and wait for the next story to find you.